guess. Okay, let's go ahead and start. Hi everyone, my name is Tetiana Kotko. I work for Education USA Advising Center here in Kyiv.
You need to say it once again.
Okay, no worries. Should I start? Okay, hi everyone. My name is Tiana Kotko. I represent Education USA Advising Center here in Kyiv, and we are very happy to host this event. We will have a wonderful lecture by the professor from the School of Business, Gerald Groshek, correct? By the Redlands University, and the lecture will be dedicated to education in the field of international management and business. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone, for attending today. As she mentioned, my name is Professor Groshek, and I am with the School of Business at the University of Redlands in Southern California. And so I teach in the School of Business Economics and International Business courses. And I've been coming to Kyiv since 2010, I think, on a Fulbright grant, and then a subsequent Fulbright grant that we, and as a consequence of that Fulbright grant, we established some joint programs that we're going to be discussing a little bit later today. But first, they asked me to discuss in general some trends and responses in international or business education in general. So I'm going to begin looking at some trends in business. And because I'm trained as an economist, I always start with supply, and we'll get to demand in a little bit. But some of the trends in business education really have to do with the supply of the providers of business education. And we have seen in the past few years an increase in the supply of institutions providing business education. So, for example, there has been a rather large increase in the for-profit providers or for-profit universities that are providing business education. That has led to some concerns, at least in the U.S., about quality and about the prospects for graduates from those institutions. But they have really provided a kind of a source of competition for established business schools. And in many cases, they have hundreds of thousands of students across the U.S. So that has increased the supply. I've kind of noticed recently a little bit of a decline in their presence due to the concerns, both social concerns and political concerns about the quality of those programs. But nonetheless, they exist, and they're in the educational space. Another aspect on the supply side is that there's just a lot of program growth in business education in Europe and in Asia and Canada and other parts of the world that are really giving a lot more competition to established American institutions, American universities providing business education. So we also see those institutions that are competing or attracting students with programs that are in English. So, for example, you will even now see French business schools teaching Chinese students in English. And so that, again, has increased the supply, increased the number of providers and options for students to get a business education outside of the kind of the Anglo-Saxon world, the US, the UK, Australia, and Canada. We're also seeing an increase in the number and quality of business schools in Asia, in Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, Korea, China, for example. So again, another source of supply. On the demand side, we're also seeing some difficult situations for business schools in that demographics are leading to a decline in the number of students who are kind of graduating from high school and undergraduate programs and then are selecting master's programs in education. And I know in Kyiv as well, you have that, or in Ukraine as well, you have that that situation with the declining demographic cohort of students, and we're seeing that as well. I think projections are that the number of students graduating into universities in general is going to be declining over the next 10 to 15 years. So that puts some pressure on universities and business schools in general. We're also seeing economic conditions in general. Typically, when the economy improves, there are fewer students seeking graduate education. It was odd after the 2008-2009 financial crisis. The number of students seeking a graduate education actually increased because as people were laid off, instead of waiting around to wait for a job to open up, they kind of went back to school and retooled. And so we're seeking graduate education or another degree. So currently the economy seems to be doing rather well globally. And in the US, so that has also contributed to the number of students who are willing to kind of give up the paycheck to continue their education. So the fewer students that we're seeing domestically has actually led us to seek out, and business schools everywhere, to seek out international students, to look for students from abroad to come in. Because if the population is declining domestically, how can we attract students from other parts of the world? So that has been working quite well for many U.S. institutions, given the attractiveness of programs and things in the U.S. But we have seen a decline recently, and many institutions are blaming that on the negative rhetoric that is coming out of kind of the political situation in the United States, with the kind of hesitance to allow migration or immigration into the U.S., some of the political debates left and right about the benefits and costs of migration. And so that's kind of casting a rather negative pall or negative impression for international students to come to the U.S. And since there are a lot of programs available in Canada or in Europe or Asia, they are seeking those opportunities abroad rather than coming into the U.S. So that's kind of as well a negative aspect for the U.S. For international students. Hopefully that'll change. Another aspect is just the pure cost of education at a higher degree. A major complaint of U.S. universities is that they cost too much, and anywhere from $20,000 up to over $100,000 a year. So the cost of education is something that has been on the minds of many faculty, administrators, as well as students and their parents, to come up with ways to try to deal with that high cost. And I'll touch on that a little bit later as well in terms of some of the things that we're doing to respond to that. Now, if we look at the supply and demand conditions, everybody's out searching for students. So if you're a student, and I think some of you are, it's a good time to be a student because there's a lot of institutions that are kind of bidding for your attention and bidding for your interest in joining their programs. So we're seeing, because of this kind of rather competitive environment, that business schools particularly are having to come up with new programs, new ways of interacting and attracting students, and we'll talk about some of them here today. So we're, again, looking for international students. All universities are. The universities in Ukraine are as well. Universities in Western Europe are looking for international students and coming up with ways to provide programs and interest for those kinds of international students. We're also seeing that there is an increase in the attention to non-traditional students. And the non-traditional students are those who are beyond the age of 18 to 21 who are just coming out of the high school and going into the university. Most students now, in fact, I think the majority of students in the United States are considered non-traditional. So they're fully employed students, or they're students coming back for various shorter programs or retooling in their careers. So it's a great source of interest in attracting those kinds of students and having them engage in what we call lifelong learning. So that as we tell our students that after you get your bachelor's degree or your master's degree, it's not over, because you have to constantly retool, constantly seek accreditation, certificates, and other kinds of maybe job-related certifications. And that doesn't make them very happy, but that's the way it is currently in today's environment. We also are seeing programs that if we can't get the student for the entire program, maybe we can share the students and we get them for part of the program. And that's what we'll talk about today with some of the things that we've developed with the Kyiv National Economic University to share the students, so they have an opportunity to get a degree, either what's called a dual degree, where you can get, for example, a law and business degree, or some kind of math and architecture degree, something like that, where there's two subjects being provided, one from one institution, one from the other. Or what we are doing is a joint degree, where the students take part of their single program with one institution and part with another. And there's quite a few institutions that are really going down this path. An institution that I'm familiar with in Paris has a program with about 6 international partners, where students spend 6 months in one school, maybe in Spain, and 6 months with another in North Carolina, or in the UK or Germany. And that's, again, programs that are very interesting and offer a global perspective and allow institutions to kind of share the declining or the limited number of students. So those are some of the ways we search for students, and it's leading to a great deal of innovation, I think, in the kinds of programs. But we're also seeing the diversity of programs, not just the plain, go to class during the day and study at night and those kinds of things that that traditional age students see. At the master's level, we're seeing a growth in the area of specialized master's programs. So we all have heard of the MBA, and most business schools offer that. Some are kind of seeing declines in the MBA population and the number of students that are seeking the MBA, but increases in the number of specialized degree, maybe, for example, in a specialized degree in finance, or green business, or sustainable business, or other kinds of very specific kinds of programs. And I'll mention that as well a little bit later. We're seeing the increase in the number of shorter programs, again, due to cost, especially at the master's level. Students typically want to get their degree rather quickly, so that they can go out and start earning money, so they can pay back all the loans that the money that they borrowed from their parents or somebody else that, to get that education. So we're seeing programs that are truncated or are shorter, where you are giving credit for previous experience or previous coursework at the undergraduate level, and we're doing that as well. We have different lengths of programs. For example, typically an MBA program is 2 years. You can get that down to 1 year if you've got a background, an undergraduate background in economics or business or some related field. You don't have to take those core courses over and over again. So you get credit for that. So that helps to reduce the time and reduce the cost of getting a graduate degree. And then we're also looking at pathways. Again, how can we leverage what you've done previously and provide a path towards from undergraduate to graduate level education. Again, if you've got a background in business, many students will go and do a 4+1 MBA program where they go for 4 years for their bachelor's and then add another year and you can get your MBA. And other master's programs are like that as well. So ways that are, with the supply and demand conditions are causing business schools to seek new sources of students as well as to design new kinds of programs. And then we're seeing a lot more emphasis on self-directed learning, experiential learning, with the use of the internet and things that students can take responsibility for their education outside of the classroom, where there's not just learning going on when you're sitting in front of the professor in a kind of structured class session. There's all sorts of learning management systems and online tools and videos and all sorts of things that you all know about on the internet that can engage the student even when they're not sitting as you are in front of a professor, waiting for little drops of knowledge to be dropped on you. You can do it on your own as well. And internships and other kinds of simulations and things that are being incorporated into the classroom in order to provide different ways of learning and helping the student to take responsibility for that. Now, in terms of the, not just the trends, but responses more in general to these trends, we're seeing that curriculum needs to respond to industry. I'm at a liberal arts university, which means we kind of seek education for education's sake, to make you a more well-rounded member of society. But the focus on education as well should be to be a productive member of society and to do something that will help you develop a career, not just to get a job, but to develop a career in which you can progress from stage to stage and have something that's meaningful for you. So we're seeing that the businesses are working with business schools to kind of help develop the curriculum to reflect the latest needs of businesses. Things, for example, in big data or data analytics, other kinds of technology aspects, artificial intelligence, blockchain, which is all the rage currently, financial technology, e-marketing, all these kinds of more traditional kinds of topics that have now been amped up because of the changes in technology that we're experiencing and what that means for business. And so having a background in that is a plus, and that's what businesses are looking for. So collaborating with industry leaders to develop those kinds of educational and learning programs. We have a board of advisors, industry boards that kind of give input into our curriculum and say that these are the things that we can see that we're going to be needing in the future and what we need now, and what kinds of programs, what kinds of courses do you offer in order to help us fill those gaps, those skill gaps. Because of all of the increase in supply, and some of the supply hasn't been of the best quality, there has been, in the US market, a very big increase in the focus on assessment. And that's not just assessing the students, but it's assessing whether the program is doing what it says it's doing. So we've had, and this is for our accrediting bodies, are very interested in making sure that we have procedures and processes in place to constantly be assessing the effectiveness of our programs to be sure that we are achieving the quality and achieving the outcomes that we claim. And so previously, measures of quality of institutions has been based on inputs. How many books are in the library? How many databases do you have? How many professors do you have with Nobel Prizes? And those kinds of things. And those kinds of those kinds of metrics don't really measure the output or the outcomes. So we've been encouraged to move to assessing outcomes. So what do they know? How do they apply it? How do they analyze it? And we have a whole series of now administrative and governance structures in our School of Business to constantly be measuring at every course how the students are doing and if they are or are not meeting the objectives of our accreditors and of ourselves. And if not, we have to devise a plan to address those shortcomings if they exist and when they exist. So a big focus on assessment. So if you're a student and you're wondering why you're getting asked all these questions and you have to take all these additional kinds of tests or assessment measurements, it's because of this increased focus on assessment. We're also seeing that we're adapting to new delivery methods, to new delivery modes because of the changes in technology. As I mentioned, the expanded use of experiential learning through consultancy projects, simulations, other kinds of hands-on application of the theory and concepts that you read about and that you hear in lectures. You also have to prove that you're actually applying those. And so we've got, for example, capstone courses and things like that that will force the students to apply these concepts and to synthesize the different areas in ways that show that they learned and that they can use those tools in an effective manner. In terms of entrepreneurial activities, there's a shift away from teaching a kind of a standard approach to developing a business plan. Because many companies or many entrepreneurial activities are done in a very small scale. So doing a business plan may not be very relevant for those kinds of companies that are, really generating a lot of new activity, new ideas, and new areas of the economy. One can just look at, things like Airbnb that started in somebody's, had an air mattress in somebody's kitchen, and now it's, billions and billions of dollars. So those kinds of things that help these little ideas grow into big ideas. There's a more focused approach on business schools helping their students to test their ideas in kind of a lower stakes environment where you're not going to lose, all of your money if you do something incorrectly. So there's ways for professors to kind of give advice and have an iterative process to develop these kinds of new ventures. We're seeing as well, as I mentioned, a response is a focus on specialized degrees and kind of shorter certificates. So even non-degree programs, you will find that schools of business or universities have a specialist or continuing studies program where students can go in and get a very specialized certificate in supply chain management or healthcare management or something that is very specific to their needs in their current position. And that helps them then to stay current and continue to advance in their career path. So that, as well as the specialized degrees that I mentioned in finance or e-marketing. And of course, we are seeing a growth in online courses. Our university now has our MBA program online. Most universities have online courses. I'm actually developing a couple online courses currently, and I can say that I was kind of hesitant about doing it, but they're actually very interesting. And the things that you can do with learning management systems and the technology and the ways of engaging with students, even when they're not in front of you, is rather interesting and rather exciting. And so I can see that those kinds of programs will be much more prevalent, and they already are growing by leaps and bounds. But they do provide very good quality additions. And so even if you just take a part of your courses in class and part of them online, it offers, again, flexibility to students, and it offers flexibility to universities because we can then generate sufficient class sizes to offer more kinds of courses and programs because the students can come from basically anywhere around the world. And so it's a very exciting part of the new delivery modes. And even if we're not engaging in online learning, there are things that can happen in the classroom and in a kind of a traditional course where we can implement new technologies using smart classrooms and other kinds of technology that can do, as we're doing today, stream over YouTube and engage in other kinds of online simulations and online exercises that help students provide the conceptual knowledge and apply that to real-world situations. So again, another area of response. And we, business schools and education in general, we've been saying this at least as long as I can remember, is that you prepare students for uncertainty. And we always have uncertainty. But there is kind of, we always think there's a special kind of uncertainty today, which is different than the uncertainty 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's still uncertainty. It's going to be there, but we just have to deal with the different forms that it takes currently. So we're looking at recent events, recent political events, economic events, the shift in global economic power as it shifts from North America and Europe towards Asia. That's going to happen naturally. You're not going to stop it. But that's going to mean different ways of interacting as not only for societies but economies and individuals in terms of the relative income and wealth around the world. And so those kinds of shifts have led to other kinds of political changes occurring in terms of migration patterns and trade patterns and production patterns that are leaving certain groups in society a bit unsettled and unhappy with the way the global economy, the globalization is occurring, and we're experiencing some negative feedback on those kinds of activities. Anything from Brexit to elections in Italy, elections in the US, Germany, all over the world, we're seeing these kinds of responses or negative responses to globalization. For employers, for individual students, looking for programs that challenge you to not always expect to be given a fully formed question that you can simply go and find the answer, right? And the question may not be very clear, and the information that you'll be given is not clear. And that's frustrating because you have to think about, well, why aren't they giving me the information that I need? Well, life isn't like that, and business is not like that. So focusing on demanding students to develop the expertise, develop the critical thinking skills, so they can, for one, sort out the information that is relevant from that which is not, and then to apply that in a way that is structured and systematic and reflective of the world. So that's one thing that employers are looking at. They're looking at maturity, wisdom. They're looking at a fresh perspective. One of the perspectives is a global perspective, because even though we see kind of currently a negative response to globalization, in many cases it's become a bad word to say globalization, it is not going to stop. It will continue because of changes in technology, the changes in our political environment are going to push globalization forward. It may slow down, it may stumble a bit, but it will continue. And so students need to be aware of that and hopefully find programs that reflect those kinds of values. And also, we're seeing that business schools are not only focusing on the bottom line. Profit, profit, profit. I will ask my students what businesses are in business to do, and they say to make a profit. And then I say, how much? And they say, as much as they can, right? Maximize profits. And then you can get into all sorts of discussions about whether the ends justify the means. And so we're seeing a wider reflection on the different stakeholders in society who have a say in what businesses do or who have an interest in what businesses do. So looking at business not just as kind of the profit bottom line, but also looking at it in terms of the wider effects on society. And liberal arts education, a liberal arts university, offers or provides that kind of broad-based education so that you can take the philosophical and sociological and political and other kinds of concerns and integrate them into business and get a more holistic picture of what businesses do and maybe what they should be doing on a global scale. And we're seeing, for example, at my university, we're seeing programs now that are being developed in sustainable business. So again, reflecting the environmental impact of business and whether or not it's something that is possible over a longer period of time. So those are kind of business education trends that most business school deans will kind of point to, some responses that they're engaging in. I wanted to kind of shift now to discuss a bit about what we've been doing in our response to the trends and things like that. So as I mentioned, one of the things that is of great benefit is a program like the Fulbright program, which sends US academics abroad to kind of work with colleagues. It sends foreign academics and foreign students to the US. We can begin this cross-pollination aspect. And again, as a consequence of that, we worked, myself with the administration and faculty at Kyiv National Economic University, to develop a joint program. Because the issues that are being faced here are the same issues that we're facing in terms of the supply and demand for students. And how can we achieve some of the things that business schools need to be doing in business education, management education, that reflect some of the things that I mentioned, with innovation and a more diverse portfolio of programs. So one of the things that we did is we tried to create some opportunities for international degrees. And as such, we came up with 2 programs. These are photos of both Redlands and Kyiv, and there's many in the room who have been to both, I think. So in this case, the joint programs that we have developed 2 programs. One, which is a generalist MBA program, your standard kind of MBA program with some different features to it. And then we did a specialized degree because remember I mentioned that there is a focus on specialization. So the first one is that we've got the 2 programs that are designed and delivered and assessed by faculty at both institutions. So these programs had to go through the approval process within the universities in the US and in Kyiv, as well as get the accreditation from the accrediting bodies both in Ukraine and the United States. So these programs have really been rather well vetted in terms of their structure and quality. Because of the globalization aspects, unfortunately, most programs are in English, which is a great benefit for me because I speak English somewhat passively. And I'm benefiting from that because I can really go anywhere in the world, and there will be a demand for English-speaking professors. However, that's putting some burdens on those non-native English speakers to learn English in order to get into those programs. So, as I mentioned, this program, the joint programs, are in English. The course is taught in Kyiv, as well as the courses taught in the US. Everything is in English. And so that's kind of a common denominator for students. You'll find, students can come from anywhere because they all speak English. So again, that's one of the aspects as well of the joint programs. They also include about 9 months of residency here in Kyiv at the Kyiv National Economic University. Then there is a summer semester where the students seeking that degree travel to California and spend 2 months taking 3 classes for the degree, which fulfills their University of Redlands requirements. And so those courses are offered on our main campus. And then when students, while they're there, they get to explore a little bit Southern California, which has a few tourist sites, I'm told. Also, because, again, going back to the timing, students want to get done so they can go out and start earning or putting their internships, for example, to good use. So the program takes into account the background that students have in their undergraduate. So if they have an undergraduate business degree or economics-focused degree, they basically can waive out of those kind of core program courses and then begin and jump right into the MBA coursework. That shortens the program. And in many cases, for these programs, it shortens it to about 16 months. Could be, if depending on your desire and speed, it could be even shorter. But that kind of meets that need that students want to get done with that part of their education and move on to their career. Remembering, however, that your education is never done. Okay, even for me, it's not done. I wish it was, but it's not. And as a consequence of the jointness of the program, the graduates get a degree. It's a joint degree conferred by the Kyiv National Economic University, the University of Redlands. Graduates are considered alums of both institutions with all the rights and privileges and calls for contributions to certain fundraising events that goes with it. So it reflects that jointness in the programs. The MBA program, as I mentioned, that's kind of the workhorse of a business school. And it is a generalist degree for students coming from all sorts of backgrounds. But this degree, in the case of the joint degree, has the students, again, getting that conceptual knowledge, the functional knowledge across all business disciplines in order to manage those complex enterprises that we call corporations and companies. The outcomes that we measure, that we seek for, this is our assessment program. These are the things that we actually have to embed assignments and activities in the program in order to reflect the outcomes. And the outcomes are using business knowledge across the business discipline to basically solve and prove that you can solve and generate solutions to business questions and business challenges. Businesses now are working more and more in teams. You very rarely will find somebody doing a job by themselves. It's typically teamwork, and so you have to develop those team building skills, the communication skills, the ability to communicate orally in terms of presentations, in terms of written reports and other kinds of things. So those are things that are stressed as well in the MBA. And we also are focused again on that critical reasoning or critical thinking. When you're presented with a very messy problem or a messy situation, how can you sort through and critically analyze the relevance of that information and turn it from information into knowledge, and knowledge that is useful. And then looking at a multi-perspective level, not just focusing on one silo, one area, but how can we synthesize the knowledge across these different functional areas. And in effect, what we're trying to do is to turn students from consumers of information and consumers of knowledge into producers of knowledge, so that you're coming up with things that haven't been devised before. If we look just generally at the program, I kind of alluded to this, 9 courses in total, 3 emphasis courses. The different weeks in terms of the program, some are 14-week semesters, some are 12-week, depending on the time period. And then there in the MBA, because a plain vanilla MBA is not may not be something that is attractive. Business schools offer emphases or concentrations in different areas. For example, in the joint program, we have a global business emphasis and an entrepreneurship emphasis that is offered. This is basically, very quickly, the structure of the schedule for the MBA. It begins in Kyiv in September. The core, so 3 courses are taken for that first 14-week term. The second term beginning in early to mid-December, going into mid-March. Again, covering some of the functional areas of business. When we get to the third term, we begin to focus on the emphasis. So students either take the emphasis in international business or entrepreneurship, taking 3 of 5 courses. I don't list all the courses here. Oh, yes, we do. They're all listed there. You pick 3 of the 5. They're shorter courses, more focused on specific aspects of business. And then because of the applied nature, we go out and get an intern. We have you arrange an internship, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. Once that is done, we get to about early to mid-June. That's when the students in the joint program will pack up and move to California for 2 months, taking courses in ethics and the strategy capstone. So that's a very wonderful time to be in California in August. It's just a little bit warm, but it's dry. And once that is done, then the students come back and finish their internship as well as the thesis. And the thesis is typically tied to your emphasis and tied to your internship. So it's kind of more of applied work that you're doing. The Masters of International Management is a more focused degree. Again, the MBA is a more generalist degree. The Masters of International Management is really focused on the human side of management on a global scale. So it's going to be a different program that's looking more at working in teams and managing people and managing organizations, structuring organizations, decision-making in these very complex business operations. So it's more in terms of the management aspects in an international or a global context. So in that case, again, it's a 16-month program because students will have had the core courses typically in their undergraduate programs. Then we basically go to 10 courses. There isn't an emphasis option in the Masters of International Management because it's already a pretty specialized degree, so it's already rather focused. So there are 10 courses, and again, same term structure, week structure that we find with the MBA. The courses, Core 1, here again in Kyiv, looking at global aspects of management, so it's really focused on managing globally in kind of a multinational or a global context. The second course, we then, in the third course as well, the third term, is looking at the internship. So again, the internship is required. And then everybody again picks up at the same time, comes to Redlands for 2 months and engages in 3 courses. Once those are done, they come back and again finish the internship and the thesis, which again is applied towards the course. Some aspects of the internship really focused on taking what you are learning in your courses, the concepts and theories and other kinds of knowledge, and going out and applying that in a way that you can prove that you're actually doing it. So there are a series of reports and interactions and other kinds of assignments where students have to show, for example, how they might have applied a SWOT analysis in a marketing class, or using cost centers from managerial finance. Also, developing skills that may not be completely developed inside the classroom or inside the educational experience. So working in teams, working with groups actually in business who have a real-life situation that they have to deal with, a real-life team that you have to work with, and helping to improve computer skills and communication skills, writing skills, and even listening skills. And then it does help to create a network, because a part of your master's experience is not just the knowledge that you get through your coursework, but it's also creating the network among faculty, your classmates, and in this case, companies that provide these internships. And I know many, many students who have had an internship that they've enjoyed, and their companies have enjoyed having them, and they get offers when they complete their degrees to join on a more permanent basis. So it helps to provide experience with actually engaging in job duties and responsibilities, interactions, meetings, working on a common solution to a common problem, and then developing that network of within employers that will help you as you go forward in your career. Here are some of the course of the companies in Kyiv that have offered internships to students at the Kyiv National Economic University. So you can see there are a lot of international companies providing rather interesting opportunities. We do have a student, an alum actually now, because she graduated a couple months ago, and I'll turn the floor over to her in just a bit. But you see there are companies here that are from the US, from the UK, Germany, Korea, France, a whole host of companies that provide that experience that allows you to apply that. So with that, I want to turn the mic over to my colleague from the Kyiv National Economic University, Lena Tsirkin, and she'll talk about the Kyiv portion of the program and some aspects of that. And then we will come back to Redlands, and then we'll talk with our recent alum. Okay, Elena?
I'm most privileged to see so many familiar faces here today. And just before we talk about the strengths and characteristic features and core competences both universities give, I'd like to draw your attention to the concept of internationalization that supports our joint programs. Gerald has already talked about our well-articulated institutional commitment of both universities, the University of Redlands and Kyiv National Economic University. By the way, we have signed not only just the agreement on mutual understanding between our universities, but the agreement that specifies nitty-gritty rules behind just these joint programs. Administrative leadership, structure, and staffing come second. Without administrative support, just ranging from just rector of the university to the dean of the faculty who is with us, and to our faculty members, professors who teach numerous courses Gerald has just described. By the way, our professors are in this room here. Without their contribution and their great passion and their professionalism, these joint programs would have never been started. I would like to emphasize the fact that our faculty members have got the experience of teaching in the United States and in our partner university. So therefore, they may compare and benchmark and just may talk about the outcomes and learning outcomes and reaching and achieving these outcomes in the United States and here in Ukraine. Curriculum, co-curriculum, learning outcomes, Gerald has taught about that. But if you look at, by the way, we have brought the materials and we will be more than happy to provide you with the materials describing MBA and International Management program in all the details. But you can see that just this joint curricula enables students, well, here at KNEU and in Redlands to reach learning outcomes. I'd like to draw your attention to student mobility. Just Gerald has mentioned the fact that students during our joint programs have an opportunity and they go to the United States and stay there for 2 months. Alina will tell us about her experience, about, well, just her classes and her extracurricular activities. But here at the university, we emphasize the importance of collaboration and partnership. Yes, we do celebrate your personal success, but it is more than important to form these partnerships. Everything starts at the level of the university, when you work in teams. Therefore, Redlands and KNEU celebrate partnerships and teams and prepare teams for numerous successes. Well, I have not put just all the teams that have just shown, well, high competences of both universities and of the university, Kyiv National Economic University, in numerous events. Gerald now just will continue and we will give the floor to Alina. But we would like to say that faculty members who have come here to the presentation today will be more than happy to answer your numerous questions concerning courses, concerning learning outcomes, concerning internships. So they're here, and once again, after the presentation or during the presentation, if you have questions, they will be more than happy to answer them. And Gerald, I will give now the floor back to you, and then we'll continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Lena. Yeah, so Lena kind of just briefly reviewed the activities and resources available in Kyiv. Just a couple, and most of you might be more familiar with the Kyiv National Economic University than Redlands. The University of Redlands is located in Southern California, right there. And it's a liberal arts, private liberal arts institution, and we have a business school. And as a liberal arts institution, we have a focus on educating the entire student. So not just to get a job, but to be active and effective members of society. So our business school is embedded in that tradition in Southern California. We have around 4,200 students with about 1,700 in the School of Business. And we offer programs in the School of Business, obviously the MBA, Masters in Management, Masters in Information Technology, and then some undergraduate Bachelor of Arts in Science and Business. The university as well offers a wide range, everything from chemistry and biology to religious studies and philosophy. So we have a wide range of resources just on our campus in terms of faculty and departments that you can. I find it, if I have a question, I just call up the person in our physics department and ask the question. And so that's the kind of place that Redlands is. It's kind of sunny most of the year. And here you can see some of the areas. It's about 60 miles, 90 kilometers from Los Angeles. So you're very close to the ocean. The mountains are right in here. The desert is out there. So within an hour, you can either be very hot in the middle of the desert, or you can be on the beach in Orange County or in LA. So it offers a wide range. It's a very multi-ethnic, a very diverse population. I would say one of the most diverse populations in the world live in Southern California, which makes it extremely interesting, extremely vibrant, and a very interesting place to be. With that in mind, I thought I'll invite Alina, our most recent alum, and she's very graciously agreed to say a few words and impressions on her stay last year in Redlands. So, Alina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alina, and I am an alumni of Master of International Business Programs. And during my education, I had that experience of studying a summer semester in California abroad. Basically, my motivation was to obtain that experience in order to compare our Ukrainian approach of studying with American one. So we had 2 wonderful months at Redlands University in California. And really, it was the brilliant experience which will stay in my memory forever. And I still remember it with warmth in my heart. During our stay in USA, we had the free subject with the real American students. The classes were absolutely different by their contents, teaching approach compared with Ukrainian. One of the most interesting and not typical for me personally was the capstone, which was taught by Professor Groshek. That was the business simulation, which uses the specific software. And at the subject, we had to manage the companies in different market conditions in order to get the most possible business results. Besides the technical skills which were applied by us, we had opportunity to develop our international communication skills. We were working in the groups, so we had to find the common language with the different people from different culture, different ages, in order to find the common solutions and to discuss the different points of view. That was not only while solving the different complicated tasks in the classes, but also in our everyday routine on the campus. And I can say that as a result, we have made a lot of friends with whom we still keep in touch. Of course, we had time to travel around the California, visiting popular places, for example, Sequoia National Parks and Yosemite National Parks, Las Vegas, of course. And I wish we had more times, but still we received a lot of bright impressions. And just to sum up, to all of students who will decide to repeat our experience and is going to visit the Redlands University, I wish not to be afraid, get out of the box and push yourself to the limit and get that great experience as well. And if somebody asks me, would I repeat that experience, I will, without no doubt, repeat absolutely yes. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Right, before we turn to questions, I just wanted to kind of go over entrance requirements and things. You can kind of get all that information online. But I think it might be more beneficial to see if there are any questions.
If you guys have questions, there is a mic for you. So.
And if not, I'll go
Don't
home.
be shy. Maybe afterwards. Yeah, you have questions? Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I would like to ask the question considering the tech specialty of students. Is it wise to receive as much as you can the knowledge of tech studying in California, considering that the big part of R&D investments are accumulated in this area? To secure later the job in the region, is it wise to learn as much as possible in tech, studying in California?
I think the nature of technology is that people are learning it everywhere. Silicon Valley is about 8 hours by car north of us. It's on that towards San Francisco. It looks like San Francisco is just right here, but it's quite a distance. I would say, I mean, I've seen some tech incubators here in Kyiv as well that I think are doing interesting things. And I think if you're interested in technology, you will seek out ways to get it anywhere. Now, being in California, in Southern California, offers you some benefits in terms of the closeness, so that if you're interested in visiting or contacting, we have many of our adjunct faculty and our faculty in general who have contacts throughout Southern California in terms of technology. In fact, in Redlands, we have the headquarters of Esri. I don't know if you've heard of Esri. Used to be ESRI. They are the world's largest software producer of geospatial technology. So if you go on Google Maps or you are trying to find your way on your navigator, all that stuff comes from Esri, and they're located right in Redlands. And we have many of our faculty who work at Esri and teach in the MBA program. Yeah, if you're interested in that, I mean, it's right there, just down the street. But I would encourage you. I would encourage you to kind of seek the technology wherever you find it, and if you're really interested in it, you'll find it. And again, that's what we're seeing as well with business schools, is that business schools are having to develop these programs and these structures to engage with technology in the classroom and outside of the classroom.
And do you have any incubators at the territory of your campus?
We don't. We have kind of internships that are offered to students, but we don't have a specific tech incubator on campus. There are ways that our faculty work with. For example, we recently, a few years ago, had a grant with the Small Business Association to help. So we had students and faculty go out helping businesses in the community, everywhere from Palm Springs out, into other parts of Southern California, develop their businesses. One of the things that we do as well is we have a consulting capstone, where our students will engage with a local business to solve some problem. And typically, these are startup businesses or small businesses who need some input. And so and that's an option as well, to do that capstone instead of the capstone that Elena referenced.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hello, I'm a student of Kyiv National Economic University. And could you please tell why our students go to Redlands only for 2 months, and could we make this time longer?
Yes, you can. This is one of the things that I kind of alluded to when I talked about the cost of education. As you know, you may know that university education in the U.S. is rather expensive. Even for Americans, it's very expensive. One of the things that was a big concern in developing this program was how to make the program affordable to students coming from Kyiv, given the economic conditions, the political conditions, the uncertainty, which, you had a huge devaluation of your currency that affects your ability to study abroad. So the reason we kind of compacted it into 2 months was to kind of limit the accommodation costs and those kinds of things in Southern California, but also to limit the number of courses, because you'll be paying the Redlands tuition for that, which is much higher than the courses that you take in Kyiv, which is at a lower tuition. So it's a way for us to provide a program that's interesting and solid and credible, but also that's financially possible for students from Ukraine. However, if you want to stay longer, that is possible. One of the things that I mentioned is an option. I think if I go back, but one of the things was in that 5th term, instead of coming back from Redlands after the 2 months to finish your internship and your thesis, you could stay in Redlands and do your second internship and your thesis. So that would give you more time. But again, there's going to be an increased expense.
Thank you. And is there some scholarship or something like that in Redlands?
For international students, there are some limited funds or limited, from my understanding, limited ways that international students can get a bit of a discount, but I'm not quite sure what the criteria are. And as you can well imagine, there's a lot of demand for that, and so they're rather competitive.
Thank you.
To get that. Yeah.
My name is Valery. I'm a student at Kyiv National Economic University, and I have a question concerning the MBA program that you promote. In your opinion, which points should we consider when deciding to take an emphasis in entrepreneurship, or in global business? So, which core points we should take into our attention? We should point out to understand what should we follow.
Yeah, I would think, I don't think there's any hard and fast rule. I think it's really up to the student, obviously. You knew that answer was coming. But if you're interested in generating new ideas, and maybe not doing it yourself, but working for a company that's new and fresh, and we know that Ukraine, you need a lot of new businesses here because there's a lot of potential for businesses in this economy. And so if that's something that you're interested in, then definitely kind of the entrepreneurship. And again, it's not that you're going to necessarily go out and be an entrepreneur. You may well be, but it may also be to work with a startup and to provide something that they may not have, because a lot of startups, somebody has a good idea, but they don't really know how to kind of implement it. And so they need people who can do it, that have some aspects. So I personally think it's based on your interest. If you're more focused on global and you want to kind of work internationally on a whole range of issues, that would be a good emphasis to take. Some people, I noticed that students are saying, well, how do I get a job in the US? And they look at me like, find me a job, right? And I can't. I mean, the current political situation and there's so many people wanting jobs and coming to the U.S. I would say the best way to get an international job is to stay home and work for one of those companies that's global. Then you get in their system because they will be more able to help you and sponsor you and have you move with some authority from one country to the other. I know I've had students who started in Slovakia, for example, and that student now is working at a large Swiss bank in Singapore, working his way up. He had a career, so he followed a career path. So I think the best way to get an international career is to start at home with a global firm, a multinational, and get that network created, and then show that you're competent, show that you're effective, and it will just happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the lecture. It was very interesting and informative. I'm a first-year student at Kyiv National Economic University, and as we know, the educational process in the USA and differs from the Ukrainian one. And could you tell us how we can prepare ourselves to face that cultural differences?
I think students are much more demanding. So you have to be more demanding, more critical, positively critical. You know, not always take what the professors say as, you know. Now, I shouldn't be saying this because this is streaming. So we really do want the students just to do what we tell them, right? But no, I think students are more questioning, and so I think as you prepare, obviously prepare in English and prepare your written and speaking skills, which makes you able to participate, but also to kind of think critically and question and to ask questions and to challenge your classmates, challenge the students, because for me, that's what makes the classroom exciting, is if I say something and students go, I don't know about that. And then we get into an engagement. And I mean, Elena probably has more because she did it, and she was very successful in Redlands. I don't know, does that sound about right? See, she does what I say. Yeah, but I don't know if that answered your question, but I would just say just be more open. Not that you're not open, but just be willing to expect things that aren't in your realm of experience. And this is for any student, because and then try not to make judgments on how things are occurring, but to try to understand why things are happening that way. And that then makes you a bit more adaptable and flexible and successful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Back there.
Could you tell, please, in master programs for non-international economic students, have you any scholarships?
Yeah, we kind of mentioned that there are very limited opportunities for it's probably not a scholarship, but for some cost reduction, depending on the demand and the supply of funds that are available. But typically, the scholarships are on a kind of an individual basis. So in general, we just focus on, for example, and this is in the materials. I don't know if we'll get that, but yeah, they're in the back. But there might be information in there about different kinds of cost reductions and things like that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if that's it, we can conclude. I just want to thank you for attending and your interest and your questions. And if you do have any more questions, there are people here that can respond. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, guys.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, because faculty members are here, professors are here, and the dean is here, and the deputy dean, just the administration, the representatives are here, and if you have questions concerning, entrance requirements, fees that are to be paid in the US and in Ukraine, we are just more than ready to answer your questions. Thank you. And once again, we would like to say that we look forward to seeing you, at our joint programs. Thank you.
Start moving.